Well, Queen's Goals is a social initiative aimed at the mental, emotional and physical wellness and development of young African girls. Having worked with several high schools across the Gauteng area, as well as the small and underprivileged communities in Johannesburg, the initiative encourages young girls to be agents of social change through motivational sessions, career workshops, community outreach programs, community development projects, food and feminine hygiene drives, to name just a few. Well, for more on this initiative, we're joined by its founder and executive director, Vanessa. Vanessa, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us in our studios this morning. When I was going through your biography, I was taken aback at the fact that you founded this at 20 years old.
Yes, I did.
I don't want to recall what I was doing at 20, but I mean, just talk to us about what it was about, what Queen Goals is trying to achieve that really resonated with you at such a young age and really kind of, drove you to start this initiative.
Yeah, thank you very much for that and thank you for having me. I think, first of all, from a very young age, my parents have always been people who were socially conscious, you'd say. And, especially with my dad, he'd always, because he's an academic, he's a historian, so obviously, most of the time, he'd always talk to me about, the progress of the African, community, of the African continent, essentially. So I kind of grew up with those ideas being embedded into my mind of how can I, take my place as a young woman, in the world. How can I take up space, as Zunzi would say. And I think for me, when at 20, it was very important for me because I realized that there was a school, just close by where I stayed, a small high school. And I began going there to, just have talks with the girls and, kind of like encourage them, mentor them, kind of offer them, some kind of support, I would say. And I realized that, doing those projects, the girls really, I could see the change in them and I could see how it helped the school. And I remember I would have, principals or teachers come and say, these talks you're having, they're really important. And I was actually inspired to have those talks, by my little sister. She's actually here with me in studio today behind the scenes. And because I would always, have talks with her and encourage her, and she said, my friends at school would need something like this, and that's how it started. And once I saw that, then the vision just grew from there. So it started first with little talks at schools, support groups, and I realized that we can do so much more, because I think for me it's very important that we realize the role that the African girl child plays in the overall prosperity of Africa, but most importantly in the economic development of a country. I think when you empower women, you empower a whole community. I know people say it and it seems like just a cliche saying, but it's actually very profound because somebody invested in me, somebody empowered me, and look at what I'm doing now.
Exactly. So talking about the vision growing and Queen's Goal sort of being able to scale up, I was fascinated by, a number of the projects that you've undertaken over the course of several years. You have your feminine hygiene drive, of course, but you also have these motivational sessions. And I think what struck me about those talks is that a lot of the times, the talent and the ambition and the tenacity and the drive is already embedded. It's there.
Yes.
It's latent. It's there.
Yes.
It's about the environment and whether or not the environment is conducive enough to kind of facilitate that development. So talk to me about your projects and how you went about, identifying them and sort of just making sure that they get out there to the communities that need them.
Absolutely. I think for me, first of all, it started with engaging with communities that are, underprivileged, you would say. I don't like using the word, but I think it's the best English word to describe it, I suppose. So it started there with identifying those communities. And the reason why is because I'm passionate about youth there because they have the most potential. They have the biggest dreams. And I guess that's because they come from a community where they've had to struggle and work hard, to just have the little that they have. So that creates a lot of ambition in them. And I think equally it builds a lot of character. So they really do have a lot of character to work with. So I think for me that's where I started. That's where, my passion was in starting with, not just smaller communities, but also schools and townships. So we've done some projects in Cosmos City, Blue Eagle High School. We've done some projects in high schools in Dipsloot and Soweto. We've been to Aurora Girls High, Dr. De Beers Naidu's school. There are a few more others, but these are the ones that I can remember at the top of my mind. So I think for me, identifying the need, first of all, is as the Queen's School's motto says, is that we look at the mental, the physical, and also the emotional need of the girl child. So that's why our projects are kind of like arranged the way they do, because if we look at, where we have feminine hygiene drives, that is catering for the physical and equally mental and emotional. Because if we look at a country like here in South Africa, I mean, the Global Citizen released statistics about how, girls in South Africa literally miss school because they don't have the right sanitary equipment or tools or whatnot. And that can affect the girl child's mental and emotional development, because they don't want to go to school because they don't have the right hygienic resources to be able to cater and take care of themselves. And that affects them and the place they play in society, because then they miss out on school, they miss out on their education. So I think it's absolutely very important for us to, when we're looking at community development projects, we first need to look at the heart and the mind and even the spirit of the people, and first identify that need before then moving them, to other kind of projects. I'll take, for example, we're working with a small center by the name of the Inner City Missions in Diepsloot. And over the years, and our programs are progressive like that, over the years we've had programs that, that deal with female hygiene, that deal with, the physical, mental, emotional wellness, you'd say, of the girl. And currently, between last year and this year, we've progressed into skills development. And now we're looking at the educational aspect of it. And we're empowering these girls with skills. We had one project that, for me, I think it's the crown of most of the projects we did, because I love the impact that came out of it. We had a basic hair braiding and skills development program. We're in partnership with, Sensationals Hair SA, Love Outside, Platinum Vida, and Noma Hair Salon. And Noma Hair Salon came in and trained the girls for about 3 weeks, a month, intensive, basic hair braiding training course, and afterwards they were offered an apprenticeship period at the same salon. And we've had feedback, we even have video reports of that, with the girls saying that, I now work at a salon, or I'm thinking of starting my own business. I do my moms and my friends and the women in my community, I do their hair on the weekend after school, and I generate some small income. And I think this is very important, because as Africans, having skills and a trade has always been a part of our history, especially if you look at pre-colonial history. So I think for me it was very important that our programs have that progressive nature. We encounter the emotional, what it is that they feel and they deal with, give them that support, and at the same time then empower them to get out of whatever it is circumstance or environment or situation that they might have.
That's such an important leg of the work that you do, the empowerment, because it's one thing to present someone with an idea that they can sort of work towards and aspire towards, but when they go home and they find themselves, disadvantaged, in the sense that they don't have the equipment, then it sort of stalls the entire process. So that empowerment element is so important. Something else is, of course, that you've managed to partner together and to work together with very impressive, successful black women who have come forward, told their own individual stories, because that's important. Context is always important, as a means of empowering in a different way, in a sort of inspirational way, in a sort of, look at me, I look exactly like you, and look what I have been able to do. So just talk to us about those partnerships and sort of the important role of representation that they played.
Absolutely. I think it's very important. That's why we have, the mentorship aspects of our program. I think it's very important that we show women who have come from these backgrounds. Like one of the partnership we did was an examination motivation session with the High Court Judge Lebohang Madiba, and we had that in Aurora Girls High. And I'll never forget when she opened up the talk, she spoke about how she came from a township. She said, I slept with rats. And, they were poor. Her and her family were poor, that's what she said. And she said one day she asked, and I'll never forget this because it impacted me as a young lady, because I've also come from humble beginnings as well. And she said that she'll never forget one day she asked her father, she's like, what happened? Why are we at this stage in our lives? Why don't we have, why can't we pursue our dreams? Why are we living this life? And he said, oh, my father didn't, and she said that was the moment she made up her mind that, you know what, I'm not going to pack up in the same parking lot my father packed up. If he's saying that, it's because of his father and his parents, I should take that ownership. And I think that's what's very important, is that us young Africans, especially young Africans looking at this Gen Z and millennial generation, we can't keep saying, oh, it's the government, oh, it's the leadership. What are we doing about it? No, but so back to George Lebohang's story. And so after that, she made up her mind. After matric, she went to UJ with the determination that she was going to get a scholarship. And she went in there, and the person she spoke to was like, no, we don't have a scholarship. But she kept coming back, and she was very pressing, that so much so that the person began to feel and empathize with her. And was like, okay, I would speak to this and speak to that. That's how she got her scholarship. She studied law, and now she's a high court judge in South Africa. So she motivated the girls and inspired them with her story. And, after some of the girls were crying during the session. After the session, some of them came up to her and came up to me and said that, wow, they're so inspired. Some of them said, oh, you inspired me to now actually want to study law. You inspired me to want to get my grades up, because now I don't just want to, after matric, just chill. I want to find something to do, because she came from the same background as they did. So I think it's very important to collaborate with women who can be representatives. We see that with a lot of South African women who are going and doing amazing things. The newly crowned Miss SA, she's a young woman doing amazing, community projects. You have Zonzi, you have Nomzamo Mbata. You have these women who are making, change around the world, and who, young South African women or young African women, let's start there, can look up to and be like, wow, I want to be that. I want to aspire to be that. So I think it's very important for representation.
So, I think you're right, 100%, that we have, as a generation, we tend to kind of focus on what everybody else isn't doing, as opposed to looking at ourselves as agents of change in our own right. But it is important to have a conversation around how organizations such as yourself can be assisted.
Absolutely,
partnerships with the state, partnerships with other private organizations are very important for grassroots, sort of community-based organizations like yours. Because we're talking about scaling up, and it's not just about the community of Deep Sloot or some of the inner city missions that you've had. It's about widening it and making sure that more people benefit. So what's your hopes for Queen's goals? Are you hoping to see it, scale up and grow and become a part of a wider circle of young women?
Absolutely, definitely. The vision for the Queen's Goals is to, have projects and different projects in schools, communities, centers, branches, whatever the case is, all across Africa. Because, again, our motto is we are for the African girl child, and I think that's the vision. And yes, South Africa birthed the Queen's Goals, but I think South Africa is what's going to help the Queen's Goals expand into other African countries. So I think definitely, as you said, it's very important that we have that support from, the government and private institutions, because I tell you, I'm one of many. There are so many young people, like, I'm not kidding you, we have like a whole forum, sometimes we collaborate and do projects together. There are so many young people, literally my age and even younger, who are doing these same community projects. And I feel like we go unlooked by a lot of, government organization or private organization, but our work goes unlooked and we don't gain that support. And a lot of the times we have to do things for ourselves. So I think definitely getting that support is very important. But I think in terms of, just global expansion or expansion in the African continent, for years, global expansion, definitely. In 2030, Africa is going to have the largest workforce in the world. And about 80% of that is going to be young people.
Right.
And I think for me, that is what the vision I have for the Queen's Goals is, to be able to play a part. Because when we look at that and we look at unemployment rates, not just in South Africa, all across Africa, we think to ourselves, what is going to be the change? What are we going to do? And that's why skills development programs are an essential part of what the Queen's Goals does, is because we're trying to ignite an entrepreneurial mindset within our youth and say, listen, you don't have to wait for a job to find you. Why don't you create one? Why don't you create an opportunity for yourself? Absolutely. So I think globally, or in the future, that's what we're looking at, yes.
Well, Vanessa, this was an inspiring conversation.
Thank you
so much for coming into our studios and joining us. That was a founder of the Queen's Goal, Vanessa Alili, helping us to just unpack her business there. Up